Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? I hope everything is fine. This is Pepe from Spain and I welcome you to the game of the day of round number 7 of the Gashimov Memorial. I bring a fantastic game that has been played between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and one of his biggest rivals, Shamkir from the Netherlands, one of the best players in the world. It's been a really interesting game with a lot of attacking play, so I hope you guys enjoyed the game. Let's cut the bullshit and start analyzing what happened in the 64 squares, where Magnus decided to go for c4, the English opening. Magnus has been using this opening a lot, even in the World Championship. So it's not a big surprise for Anish, and he decides to go for e5. Knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, attacking the e5 pawn, and knight c6. And here, actually, they both played in the Blitz World Championship, where Magnus decided to go for the move e4, which is extremely interesting. And bishop c5 was played by Shamkir, knight takes e5, and this line where Magnus went for d4, and then finally ended up winning a fantastic game in that Blitz World Championship. For sure, Giri had something prepared, so that's why Magnus decides to change and goes for the move g3. Really natural, aiming to go for bishop g2 here in the next move, and then short castle, right? And Anish decides to go for d5. And as you guys can see, this is a Sicilian with the reverse colors, right? So, but of course, with a tempo up for the white player, which is always good news. For the white player. So c takes d5, knight takes e5, bishop g2, and here maybe the most played variation continues after knight b6, right? And then black aims to develop the bishop to e7 and then go short castle, etc, etc. There are thousands of games with that variation, but here Shamkir decides to go for bishop c5. This is a move that maybe Grishuk brought to the top tournaments. The idea is that knight takes e5 doesn't lead to an advantage for white. After knight takes e5, knight takes e5 is a bad move. Knight takes e3 and then b takes e3. You don't want to take on c6, right? Because there is the move, boom, queen f6, attacking the queen and attacking the pawn on f2. So that's why here after knight takes e5, d4, bishop d6, bishop takes e5, and then this looks equal. So that's why looks like after bishop c5, white has to play slowly with the move short castle here, and Anish went for short castle, d3, and here in the World Championship we had two games, if I remember correctly, between Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana, where in both games Fabiano decided to go for rook e8, and then Magnus in one of the games went for bishop g5, and in the other one went for bishop d2. But here Giri tries to change and plays the move h6, which has been played for the first time in top tournaments, in top level, we could say. So it's some sort of a novelty, right, in a top tournament. So the idea is rather simple. You want to control g5, and so there's no bishop g5 against rook e8, etc. And of course now you want to maybe go rook e8 and continue your play. So here Magnus decides to take this knight on d5. It's actually pretty tasty with a really good curry sauce. Queen takes e5 and a3, of course, aiming to go b4 in the next move and trying to expand your pawns on the queen side. So that's why Shamkir says, you know what, I'm not gonna let you do that. So that's why a5 was played, and bishop d2 by Magnus Carlsen. Maybe this bishop is well placed on bishop c3, and this bishop on c3 would be threatening also a tactical shot. Let's say if you play rook e8 here in this position, bishop c3, what would be white's threat here to go knight d4, right? For example, if you go something like bishop e6 here, let's say bishop e6, knight e5 or knight d4, both look pretty good for white. So that's why after bishop d2, queen e6 was played. You don't want any troubles with this guy on g2. And now rook c1, attacking this bishop on c5. The queen on e6 is not so nice placed, because you want to develop this guy from c8, right? It's not enjoined on that square. You want to be developed, so that's why queen e7 was played. protecting the bishop on c5 and also allowing this guy finally to go out to get some fresh air, right? So bishop c3 was played by Magnus Carlsen, putting pressure on e5, and now knight d4. This is a really typical move in these structures, and the idea is that if white takes on d4, after e takes d4, there's gonna be a lot of pressure on the e2 pawn in the future, right? Let's say after bishop d2, you're gonna go c6 in order to stop pressure on the c file, and then you're gonna continue maybe with rook e8, bishop f5 or bishop g4 even, and finally at the end of the day there's gonna be a lot of pressure on the e2 pawn. So that's why after knight d4 Carlsen doesn't want to take on d4, and instead he goes for e3, forcing the issue, forcing black to take on f3. After knight takes f3, queen takes f3 was played, and now Untitled Untitled tries to go for bishop d6, protecting e5, and also he doesn't want any trouble on the c file related with this rook. And here I was a little bit surprised when I saw this game live yesterday. Basically, if I remember correctly, in this type of structures, it's pretty natural to try to go d4 and then put some pressure after this pawn are exchanged. Let's say, and then later you take with the bishop. Finally, you want to put some pressure on the c file, on the b7 pawn with this bishop. So this is normally the idea, but this in this case, Magnus tries to go for a big attack on the king side, which doesn't look so easy now because there are not so many pieces. But Magnus' idea is extremely interesting, and we're not used to see Magnus attacking like a beast. But in this game, he dresses up like Mikhail Tal and starts attacking like a beast. So he goes for queen h5, putting pressure on the e5 pawn, but also allowing Facundo to finally join the party. You know, Facundo loves party, and it was Sunday, you know, and he was at home saying, you know, I want to get some action, you know, I want to go dance. And that's why queen h5 allows f4 in the next move. Here, Untitled plays c6, so he wants to develop the bishop from c8. It wasn't possible because the bishop on g2 is targeting the b7 pawn, so that's why after bringing Carlitos to c6, it's now possible to develop the bishop from c8. And now f4 here. Sorry, my alarm. It's 8:15 a.m. Sorry, guys. So c6, and now f4. And here, again, when I was seeing this game, e takes f4 was played. Of course, white wants to go maybe f5. It's also putting pressure on e5, so you gotta do something about it. Let's say you can play rook e8 to keep the tension, but okay, there are many interesting moves. I mean, here even tactics work because you can take on e5 and then the f7 pawn is hanging. So it's actually quite hard for black to play here. You're also threatening to go in many positions, f5 and f6, destroying black's castle. So that's why e takes e4, f4, sorry, was played. And here I was expecting e takes f4, and then rook c2 e1, f5, and looks like there is a lot of pressure here on this position. But Magnus surprisingly takes with the g pawn, which in the at first glance, this pawn on e3 is hanging. But this is an extremely interesting idea from the world champion. Let's try to analyze this position. It looks like that the best move here for black was to play king h7. This is already a really difficult move to play here. I mean, the thing is, if you continue with passive play or natural play with bishop d7, Magnus has a fantastic idea with rook f3, followed by rook g3, right in this position, putting an enormous pressure on the g7 pawn, and also you have possibilities to move in this center with your pawns, right? Then there's e4 or even f5, and it looks like there's an enormous pressure on the king side. So that's why bishop d7 or these kind of moves actually don't work. And Untitled decided to take on e3 with a check, which is a mistake apparently, but we're gonna try to analyze that position in a bit. So the idea of king h7 is to go g6 later and then to play with f5. Let's say here if you go e4 here, winning some space in the center, g6, queen e2 or queen f3, and then f5. And looks like black is holding this position. But Untitled decides to take on e3. He says, you know what? I don't trust you. I don't believe in your position. I'm just going to take that pawn, which is extremely tasty. So King h1 was played, and then Untitled says, you know what? I'm going to play Rook d8, and then I'm going to try to put my bishop on f8, and I'm just a pawn up, and then you have to convince me that you got some compensation for the sacrifice pawn. Of course, not possible to take on d3 straight away, right? Because there's rook c to d1, and the bishop on d6 is just hanging. So that's why rook d8 is very, very interesting. So after rook d8, the bishop comes to f8, protects everything, and also d3 is kind of weak. So Magnus has to prove that he has sacrificed a pawn for a reason. Here, some of you guys could be asking, Pepe, let's just bring Facundo to the action. Let's play f5 and kill that guy. Let's kill that guy. But the problem with f5 is that there's queen g5. And now suddenly, black is much better. You gotta move the queen from h5. And this is just good for black. So that's why, first of all, you deflect the queen by playing rook c to e1. The queen has to go to c5. You take on d3, there's f5 now, and it's extremely hard for black to stop everything. There's f6 coming, there's bishop e4, there's rook e to d1 in many, many lines. So here, white is just winning. So after rook c to e1, black played queen c5 here in this position, aiming to exchange queen, but of course, Magnus says, I'm not gonna exchange queen since I'm attacking. So that's why he played f5 here in this position, and now it's extremely hard for black to develop the pieces. Look at this bishop here on c8, it's doing basically nothing, and then this rook is out of the play too, and all white pieces are coordinating extremely well. So bishop f8 was played by Untitled, who is protecting everything and also attacking d3 now. So that's why bishop e4 was played by Magnus Carlsen, protecting f5 and d3. And rook d5, an extremely interesting idea from Untitled. Now we could say that Magnus Carlsen wants to play rook g1 in this position and increase the pressure enormously on the g7 pawn. So that's why rook d5 is extremely interesting by Untitled, because first of all, if you take on d5, there is an enormous compensation for white here, for black here. Queen takes d5, king g1, and let's say bishop d7 or even b6 to play bishop b7 and c5. And the bishop pair is extremely interesting here in this position. You know, I would take even black here. So that's why rook d5 is good. Second idea of rook d5 is you are not allowing to go rook g1 here in this position, since there's bishop f5. That's why Magnus plays rook f3, a very interesting move. Now he wants to bring the other rook to the action to g1, and with the rook on f3 you are still protecting the f5 pawn. So at this moment b5 was played, and Untitled wants to create some counterplay on the queen side and maybe play b4 in the next move, so this bishop has to go. And then there's no more pressure on the g7 pawn. Rook g1 was played by Magnus Carlsen, and now it's a really important moment because there are a lot of threats related with bishop takes g7. For example, if black goes here b4, then boom, bishop takes c7, bishop takes e7, and now what move would you play here with the white pieces? Come on guys, you got 10 seconds to tell me. You want to go queen h6 or rook g3? Queen h6 is just a big blunder because there is boom, ratatata, queen takes e1, intermediate move, king takes, bishop h6, and then we have to cry and then go to the showers because it's just losing for white in the spot. But the move rook f to g3 just wins. There's no way of protecting the bishop on g7, and that's why bishop g7 is a nasty threat. So after rook g1, Untitled plays rook a7 here in this position, a fantastic defensive move. Now if you go bishop takes g7 and then you want to try the same idea, there's f6 here coming. Facundo always solving the situation. Who solves your problem? Your mom solves your problem? Yes, many times. Your girlfriend solves your problems, or your boyfriend? Yeah, you know what? Not really. Your dog solves your problem. He only shits like 10 times a day, and then you have to even take that shit and then put it to the rubbish. So Facundo is the guy solving the issue. So that's why after rook a7, Magnus plays a fantastic move, bishop f6. I was so amazed when I saw this move in the game. I didn't understand the idea first, because I said, what is bishop f6 doing there? Well, the idea is that now you want to go rook f to g3, and there's no f6 in this position. So that's why bishop f6 is so nice. And if you go queen d6 here, now you can take on h6, because there is no queen to g1. So that's why bishop f6 is such a fantastic move. And beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So bishop f6 here. And then Untitled-Giri played g6. This is a desperate position for the Dutch. We gotta say that... bishop f6. And now Untitled-Giri played g6. As I was telling you guys, this is a really desperate situation for the Dutch player, because now rook f to g3 is coming. So basically, it's really tough for black to play something. So g6 was played, and here Magnus went for queen h3, protecting f5, so black can take on f5. And here rook d6 was played, and Magnus actually missed a really nice win at this point. Magnus decided to simplify the position and then reach some endgame where he was putting a lot of pressure. He decided to go here for queen h4, sorry. But d4 was a brilliant finish from for the world champion, because after rook takes d4, there's this queen sacrifice, or it looks like a sacrifice at least for 10 seconds. F takes e6, and then you guys will be saying, Pepe, what happens with the queen? What are you saying, stupid Spanish guy? So, bishop takes h3, g takes f7, king takes f7, only move, and now this cover move, bishop takes d4, and then everything's falling. King, bishop takes c5, and then rook g8, and white just wins. But instead, Magnus went to play queen h4, and here, well, white's threatening to take on g6, and that's why black had to sacrifice an exchange in order to survive. Rook f6, queen f6, and bishop e7, forcing white to trade queens. Queen c6, bishop takes c6, and king g7. And in this endgame, well, of course, white is an exchange up, but then the bishop pair could give black some compensation and then could make things hard to finish the game for white. But the problem for Untitled-Giri was that he had only like 1 minute in his clock. So that's why he started to make some mistakes here. So f takes g6 was played, f takes, and then d4. And here black could play rook c7 and then put the bishop on g5 later. And then it was not that easy for white to make progress. But here, black decided to create some counterplay on the queen side. He went to play a4. Of course, you can never take on b5 because there's bishop e7 finishing your life here. So that's why Magnus doesn't care and plays d5. And here, a big mistake from Untitled-Giri. He goes b4. And now he didn't realize that Magnus could try to attack black weaknesses on the key inside. Bishop e8 attacking g6. Bishop g5 only move. There's also rook f7 coming here in this position, so that's why bishop g5 doesn't work. Bishop g5 and boom, h4 opening the g file. Bishop takes h4, rook g6, king h7, rook c6 attacking this bishop, which doesn't have many squares, so it has to go to the only available square, bishop g4, because after bishop b7 there was rook c7 or rook f7. And rook f4 was played, and here Untitled-Giri lost some time after playing the move rook g7. But as you guys can see, this position is completely lost for black after the move, boom, bishop g6. Rook takes, king takes, rook takes e4, and actually black can resign here in this position. So it's been a fantastic game played by the world champion, played in a really aggressive way. We're not used to see Magnus playing like that, right? He normally tries to put some pressure step by step, playing strategically, but here he went for it, and then he got another win against his biggest rival, Carlsen-Giri, at least in Twitter, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed the game. It's been a pleasure for me to be here with all of you guys. I hope you guys have a fantastic Monday. There's never a fantastic Monday. We all go and work, right? So, yeah. See you in the next game. Remember, if you drink, don't drive. Bye-bye. Be good. Oh, doobie-doo.